Everybody, welcome to the foundational class of critical reasoning, smart thinking. I'm your faculty today. My name's Ram Mohan, and I'll be taking you through certain steps in this golden scale, a scale that acts as an umbrella scale for all the other subjects. Yes, critical reasoning, also called logical reasoning. And I'm not exaggerating, whether you go to physics, chemistry, or biology, anthropology, sociology, psychology, philosophy, right? Day to day life, whether you bargain in the vegetable market or whether you are uh, weighing the merits of which batsman is better, Brian Lara or Sachin Tendulkar, uh, you have to indulge in critical reasoning. I call it smart thinking, right? That doesn't mean that the other kind of thinking is not smart, but critical reasoning is real smart thinking. So, critical reasoning is an integral part of many uh, competitive examinations, as in test prep, whether you talk in terms of CAT, GMAT, GRE, SAT, probationary officer examinations, civil services, you name it, it's there. All right. So it may not be called that. Sometimes it's called, as I said earlier, logical reasoning, or sometimes it's called even analytical reasoning, although analytical reasoning differs slightly from critical reasoning. So the fundamental function of critical reasoning is to do something like something called analyzing arguments. Now, what are arguments? You may want to know. We are coming to that very soon. Uh, Critical reasoning is fundamentally to analyze what the other people say and how they say it. Do they give reasons to what they say? You know, I say, let's say, the iPhone. I think the latest model is SE. Is an absolutely terrific phone, uh, and I keep quiet there. Now, that's not an argument, all right? So, what is an argument? Let's find out. Let's find out. Overview of arguments. Please read along with me very slowly. What is an argument? An argument is not a heated exchange. That's not a fight, okay? Like the ones you might have had with a good friend. You keep saying that Leonardo DiCaprio is much better an actor than perhaps who's this guy? I keep forgetting Hindi actors' names very fast. Okay, Amitabh Bachchan, and I disagree, and we have an argument. Okay, so you're my good friend, let's say. Family members, all right. You tell your mom why you don't like your breakfast. I personally don't like something called upma, right? Or the significant other. Who's the significant other? Well, if you're old enough, it's either your husband or your wife. You see, significant. That does that make you insignificant? If you answer that question, you're actually arguing. All right. So you're actually telling how it makes you significant or insignificant. All right, let's continue. An argument, as referred to in logic, remember, this is logic, very serious subject. As I said earlier, a golden scale throughout your life, in society, in job, everywhere, is a claim or statement made which is supported by some evidence. Now, evidence is a word you may have come across in terms of legal matters, law, courts, who killed whom, or who slapped whom, all right, who is abusing whose wife, or whose girlfriend, right? And you put a police case, and you want to go to court, then you have to provide evidence. The evidence answers the question, one of the five questions, or more than one of the five types of questions. And what are they? Why, how, which, when, where, what, right? And what's the sixth one? Uh, I suppose I forgot one of those W's. Okay, five W's and one H. Okay, the most important W's are why and what, followed by how. A claim is a part of a larger concept called argument. Please be careful here. I want you to understand this before we proceed further, right? A claim is a part of a larger concept called argument, which means the argument is the superset, the larger circle, and if you think in terms of Venn diagrams, and the claim is a smaller circle within the larger circle. If you want to be even if you want to make it even want me to make it even simpler, a claim is a conclusion. Yep, conclusion. I like butterscotch ice cream. Now that's a claim. My favorite flavor is in ice creams is chocolate. That's also a claim, right? But it's not an argument. You know why it's not an argument? I'm just giving the conclusion without giving the reason why I like it. Or I like the way, let's say, Lewis Hamilton drives his car. I suppose you know Lewis Hamilton is a champion Formula One racing driver, right? Well, why do you like the way? How does he drive his car? All right, what car does he drive? Why do you like the car? Or what's so great about Lewis Hamilton that's not there in other people? You see that? So you can answer any one of those W's or one of those or that H. Let's go. Oh, sure, it's a nice day today. Now that's a conclusion. It's a claim. This statement is certainly a claim, but it is not an argument because it contains no support. All right? You have to be very careful. Arguments have support. Without support, an argument, any claim cannot be an argument. Let's say I say, right, the Inox theater I went to has more than 400 seats, fantastic screen, lovely chairs, and very comfortable aisles, and superb food. All right, the movie was also superb. You see, that's not an argument. You're just giving me information. And then you say, after all this, I loved my experience of going for the movie. Why did you love? I already gave you all the evidence or reasons. Evidence is another name for reasons, all right, or data. Supporting your conclusion is called evidence. So it contains no support for what is said. To turn it into an argument, we could say, okay, what could we say? Oh, it sure is a nice day today. We have had nearly 5 hours of sunshine. Now, this one, by now, I'm sure you have caught it. What is it? Think about it. This is the evidence. Because we have had nearly 5 hours of sunshine, it sure is a nice day today. All right. Now that's an argument. So, what's the minimum that an argument requires? It requires one statement giving information, and it requires the second statement drawn from the first statement, which is called the conclusion. The first statement is called the premise. I'll give you some more words. Premise or proposition or evidence or data or reason, any one of these is acceptable. We normally say either evidence or premise. Okay, you can get used to it. Okay, the Westerners call it premise. We spell it premise. They spell it Premiss. Okay, no big deal. Now, the claim, it sure is a nice day, is supported by some evidence, nearly 5 hours of sunshine. Let's get some definitions out of the way. Yeah, we need to know what a premise is, what a conclusion is, and what an argument contains, right? So that's we are coming to the ground zero now. Please be more attentive, please. I know you have been very attentive till now. Please keep it going, right? Thank you. Let's go. What's the conclusion? The conclusion is the claim or the main point that the author, writer, or speaker is making. All right, Bose speakers, Bose noise cancelling headsets are the best in the world. Now, what's that? Obviously, I'm making a very big statement, right? A conclusion. It's a claim. All right. Now, if I have to say why Bose is the best, I have to give, evidence. Yep, I have to give evidence. And what's an evidence? The evidence includes any facts. Bose uses uh, the valve form technology. Not only that, it generates waves that cancel out noises coming from outside. It generates a special kind of wave. That's an evidence. What that wave is, if a physicist explains it, it becomes a very powerful argument. If I explain it, it may not become powerful enough because I'm not a physicist. You see, if I'm a physicist, you'll believe me more. All right. So that argument becomes very strong. Okay, examples. It gives statistics. Bose versus, let's say, Sennheiser or boat rockers. You must be smiling now. Bose versus boat rockers. What's he saying? Surveys. I give the Bose headset and the Sennheiser's headsets to 500 people and make them listen to some Western classical music or one of the item songs from our Hindi movies. And that's a survey, and I asked them many questions on it. All right. I'm gathering a lot of, what am I gathering there? I'm gathering evidence, right? Okay. Surveys and other information or data that the author, writer, or speaker, in this case, let's say the survey is actually being written to you, right? If I ask you questions in person, I'm speaking to you. Uses in support of his or her conclusion. So what's my survey? It's based on the my conclusion, that my claim that the Bose noise cancelling headsets are the best in the world. They should be, I suppose, the best. They cost, Jesus, how much? 25 grand or so. Headsets costing 25,000 rupees. You must be joking. Anyway, let's critical reasoning is no joke, although jokes do contain critical reasoning. We'll come to that perhaps in our next lesson. Uh, let's go ahead. And what's the third piece of element of arguments can contain? See, I want you to be very clear about this. An argument need not contain an assumption. Yes, it need not contain an assumption. It can contain an assumption, although the overwhelming majority of arguments do contain assumptions. But an argument must contain a conclusion and evidence without fail. And the conclusion is drawn from the evidence. Please remember it very carefully. Evidence is the foundation from which you draw out a conclusion. Evidence is the actual foundation. Building is the conclusion, right? And what's an assumption? Be very careful. This will pose a lot of problems to you in examination. The kind of questions, these kind of questions can crop up on in reading comprehension. In CAT, let's take CAT for example, the exam CAT, right? They can come in reading comprehension, assumption questions. They can crop up in paragraph completion. They can crop up in parajumbles sometimes. Yes, or para summaries, or the odd man out. So many places. And let's go back to my original statement. Critical reasoning is a golden scale. Trust me, you want a promotion tomorrow, 10 years hence, and you want to convince your boss to give you extra pay, you have to do critical reasoning. There is no other way. You want to write a nice email statement, swaying your, that friend of yours, right? Then you have to use critical reasoning. Yes, I'm not joking. Even in love, even in marriage, even if the very fact that you want to marry one person and not the other person is based on logic, you think it's based only on emotion or other things. No, emotion is very much there, but logic is equally there, right? So never underestimate the life changing power of critical thinking or critical reasoning. So, what's an assumption? An assumption, I request you to just listen to me while I'm not reading the text, okay? Just don't look at the text, right? Don't read the text. Small request. The assumption, now you can go back to the text. The assumption is the author's unstated belief. You see that? I do not state my assumptions. Unstated evidence. That's exceedingly important. An assumption is an unstated evidence. Please bring your umbrellas to class tomorrow. Please come in your raincoat tomorrow to class, I say. What am I assuming? That it'll rain tomorrow. All right? Unstated evidence about why his or her claim is right. So the guy doesn't state it. He just says, my grandfather is the most unforgettable character I've come across in my life because he doesn't forget a single date, single important occurrence in his life of 80 years. What's the assumption there? The assumption is anyone who remembers everything in his life of 80 years is a great person. Therefore, my grandfather remembers. That's why he is a great person, right? An assumption is that part of the argument that the author, writer, or speaker assumes to be correct without stating so, and there is no proof given. No proof given. Assumption is taken for granted, right? So you want to attack somebody, attack his assumptions. Attack his assumption. Mr. Narendra Modi is someone says, let's say, is the best prime minister we have ever had. All right? All right, that's the conclusion. Why is the best prime minister? Oh, he takes so many decisions just like that. Demonetization, GST, lockdown, all those things. Well, have those decisions led to positive outcomes for the country? You see, that small question you ask, you're attacking his assumptions, right? All right. Um, this is not about politics, okay? Let's be very clear. I'm just giving you a small example, right? Without stating, so it is that which that author takes for granted. As I said earlier, an assumption does not require proof. Yep. 3x equals 21. What did I assume? All right. All right. X equals 7. More poetically, oh, critical reasoning and poetry, you bet. Poetry also cannot exist without logic. More poetically, the assumption may be said to be the glue that holds the evidence to the conclusion. All right? The glue that holds the evidence to the conclusion. Please remember, any logical statement need not be logically valid. That means it can be even bad logic. All logic need not necessarily be good logic. What is a good logic called? It's called valid logic. And what's a bad logic called? It's called invalid logic. You can give it any other name, right? Unconvincing logic. Yeah, logic need not necessarily convince. If I tell you that uh, Akshay Kumar is the greatest actor, greater actor than Amitabh Bachchan, all right, you don't have to agree with me. You can call my logic unconvincing. Well, why? You can say, did Akshay Kumar get the Dada Sahab Phalke award? Then you're making an assumption. What is that assumption? Think about it. I'll give you 5 seconds. Yeah. The assumption is for a person to be called a great actor, he or she has to get the Dada Saheb Phalke Award, or Akshay Kumar hasn't been in the Hindi movies or Bollywood for 50 years. Now, what's the assumption? For someone to be great in Bollywood, uh, that actor or actress has to be around for 50 years. You see that? That's the assumption. Okay, the assumption need not necessarily be again right. Okay, I'll repeat two very important uh, aspects of an argument. First of all, what does an argument consist of? It must have a conclusion. It must have evidence from which the conclusion is drawn. It may or may not have an assumption. And what's an assumption? An assumption is an unstated piece of evidence. All right, an invisible piece of evidence. Right. Right. So an argument can be a convincing argument or an unconvincing argument. All right. Balaya is the greatest Telugu actor ever to have acted in a Telugu movie. Right. That's a conclusion. I'll have to give evidence for that. Can you give evidence for that? All right. Let's go ahead, shall we? Here we go. The ABCs of argument structure. All right. There are 20 tips, but we'll take some just for fun. All right. Of course, we are learning, but learning without fun, is it learning? All right. I know there are some things we have to learn, even though it's not fun. All right. Traffic signals, for instance, it's not fun learning them. But then, if you don't learn them, you can get into trouble or even serious trouble, right? So it's not fun polishing your shoes. But if you don't polish your shoes, especially when you're going for a formal interview, you're in trouble. So, but trust me, critical reasoning is real pleasure. You know why? The payoff is so high, personally, socially, culturally, professionally, right? Everywhere there's a payoff. All right. So let's get down to the brass tacks. Brass tacks means the real business, serious business, having fun. Tip 20. You can also say tip 1. It hardly matters, okay? Because we are learning remember, as I said earlier, all right, the ABCs of argument structure. Evidence plus assumption equals conclusions, obviously. Why? Assumption is another piece of evidence. What kind of evidence? I'll give you 3 seconds. What kind of evidence? Visible or invisible? One, two, three. Yes, invisible evidence. Evidence plus invisible evidence. You see that? Yeah, equals conclusion. The assumption is the glue that holds the evidence to the conclusion. Glue. You can call it, the assumption is the invisible concrete girder. Can you imagine a bridge? Yes, imagine a bridge now. Now imagine all the massive concrete columns holding the bridge, all right, in its place. Columns, massive ones, big, cylindrical stuff, right? Now imagine one of the columns missing, but the bridge is still there. The bridge has not fallen into the river. It's still there. Now that column that is missing, but is not missing, is called the assumption, right? The assumption is the glue that holds the evidence to the conclusion. The following expresses the relationship between the three elements of classic argument structure. Classic does not necessarily, as such, classic has many meanings. One is top class, two is ancient Greece or Rome, and the third one, that's what he's using here. Classic here means the most standard form. All right. Classic cover drive, classic uh, mid-on pull, or deep mid wicket loft. In cricket T20, you normally see guys hitting to the deep mid wicket, right? So classic is a lovely word. It is different from classical, please be careful. So classic argument structure, and what is the classic argument structure here? On it, let's find out. Conclusion, it's like math here, um, it's very easy. 5x plus 6 equals 11. So 5x equals obviously 11 minus 6, and 5x equals 5x equals 1 kind of argument, kind of reasoning is going on here. See, did you get the joke or the irony here? We are using logic to discuss logic, and we're using language to discuss language also, in a way, right? After all, what is logic? It is language, right? A language used in a special way is called logic, right? All this is grammar. Yep. Well, what is a conclusion after all? I mean, the following expresses the relationship. That's grammar. All right. The following expresses the relationship between the three elements of the classic argument structure. That's language. That's also logic. Conclusion equals evidence plus assumption is logic plus language plus grammar. You name it. Arithmetic. It's also English arithmetic, right? Or conclusion minus evidence equals assumption, right? The ability to please read with me very slowly, this is very important. The ability to understand a simple but formal argument structure is useful. What is the argument structure? Conclusion equals evidence plus perhaps assumption. As I said earlier, assumption need not necessarily be always present. Okay, just keep that in your mind. But most arguments without fail have one assumption or more assumptions built in. One more very important point. Please don't read anything right now. Just can I request you to just listen, okay? Uh, an argument need not necessarily have only one conclusion, right? One conclusion can, first conclusion can become the evidence for the second conclusion, and second conclusion plus all the evidence, previous evidence, can become the new evidence for the third conclusion. Yeah, you can have a cascade of conclusions, one depending on the other. Yes. All right. If you go too fast, there is a probability that you will not be quick enough to react to unexpected road circumstances. Sorry. Let's say an auto is coming in the wrong direction. If an auto comes in the wrong direction, you wouldn't expect it. If you don't expect it, you wouldn't brake at the right time. If you can't brake at the right time, you may have an accident. You see what I did? Every conclusion I kept on taking as a premise for the next conclusion, right? We do it all the time in the world. Don't think of this as some kind of a, neuroscience. Rocket science, no one uses these days. Neuroscience is 1,000 times more complicated than rocket science. All right. All right. So from now onwards, if you want to say, something is not difficult, you say it's not neuroscience. All right. People will say, hey, this guy knows something else. Yeah. Actually, we know only that. Perhaps. Okay. Anyway, I was joking. The ability to understand simple but formal arguments. Now, this is very important. All right. Is there something called an informal argument? No, it's not there. All arguments are formal. The only thing is, informal arguments could be there when you're joking. All right. Your joke can be an argument, but it need not be a valid argument, as I was saying. And that's why we laugh. You know why? Every joke has some logic built into it that suddenly becomes illogical. And that illogical part makes us laugh. Yeah, right? So, memes, all of you must be aware of memes. They make you laugh because, a logic is taken to one particular position and suddenly it becomes abruptly illogical, and that in your mind, now when I'm speaking neuroscience, one part suddenly lights up, you know, one part of your brain. If you want me to impress you a little, that part is called the fusiform gyrus. Have fun, Google it. Formal argument structure is useful if not essential. Remember that, if not essential, to advance critical thinking. To advance critical thinking, after identifying the conclusion and evidence, we then proceed to examine the third element called the assumption, if at all it's there. All right. I'm feeling hungry. All right. Please give me samosas. So, what's the assumption there? Actually, there are two assumptions minimum. All right. One is when we feel hungry, we can eat samosas to get rid of the hunger. What's the second assumptions? All right. Samosas can be eaten. First of all, that's the first assumption. Samosas are fit for eating. I didn't say I'm feeling hungry. Please give me a second-hand book. Then that argument becomes complex argument. Maybe reading gets rid of my hunger. Who knows? You see that? That's a lovely, lovely argument. Very complex. It goes very deep. But we're talking about foundations right now. Okay, let's come back. Let's me bring you back to the foundations. So how do we go about identifying the first two elements, the conclusion and evidence? Identifying the conclusion and evidence. Now read along with me please, as usual. Confusion may arise as to what part of an argument is evidence and what part is the conclusion, but you know it already, right? If I can pull B out of A, B is the conclusion. But if I can pull A out of B, A is the conclusion. It's as simple as that. Let's see. Certain guide words always signal the use of evidence or the start of the conclusion. The chart on the next page lists the most common guide words. If, for example, you hear someone say, because the economy is getting better, I'm going to buy a car. You may presume means assume. You may assume that the phrase because the economy is getting better is evidence. Why? He is giving you reason. Where is he giving you reason? How do you know? Because of the word because. You see, we are discussing logic through logic and language. Is evidence. The reason for this is that because is always or because always signals the use of evidence. The remaining phrase, I'm going to buy a car, contains the conclusion. Note that these phrases may also be reversed without affecting what is the evidence and conclusion. For example, I'm going to buy a car because the economy is getting better. So what does it mean? Well, evidence can come anywhere, conclusion can come anywhere in an argument, at the beginning, at the middle, or at the end. Conclusion, evidence same, assumption same, right? So your job when reading anything from today onwards is to first and foremost isolate the conclusion and then ask yourself, uh, on which part of this piece I'm reading is this conclusion pulled from? And what is that part called? Evidence, premises, whatever, right? Data, reasons, your wish. Okay, you can use any propositions. You want to impress somebody, say proposition, right? And suddenly you'll sound like one of those very scholarly guys. Actually, most guys do that. Smart guys. Now and then they put in something unknown. You must have come across at least one friend like that. If possible, use guide words to identify the conclusion and evidence in an argument. Okay, here we go. Words that always signal evidence. Look to the left, please. Only left, please. Don't look to the right. As, as indicated by, as shown by, because, for, given that, since, the reason that, is that. Okay, let's take a tough one. Given that you have come off earlier than I expected, let's have a cigarette. Uh, that is if you smoke. All right. Um, Or given that you come late, I'm sending you out of the class. Some teachers are like that, even if you're 5 minutes late. No class. I don't know why. Personally, students can be genuinely late, right? Or students can be deliberately late. We don't know. When we don't know, it is better to give the benefit of doubt to student. That's an argument I made just now. And what is the conclusion? When a teacher doesn't know, it is better to give the benefit of doubt to student. Go to the right now, right? Don't look at the left. Don't look at it. Oh, by the way, please come to the left. All those words you can use to signal reasons or evidence or premises. As I have a cold, keep away from me, please. You may also get it. All right. So keep away from me is one conclusion. You may also get it is another conclusion. Right. Now let's come to the right. Conclusion words. As a result, clearly, consequently, hence, in conclusion, so, therefore, thus. All right. All these are conclusion words. But please bear in mind, an argument need not contain any one of these words and still be an argument. All right. In our day-to-day dialogues, do you use these words? Consequently, let's go and eat pani puri. Do you say that? All right. People are going to laugh at you. No, it's that's why we said formal logic. Okay. In informal logic, we normally don't use these words as often as in formal logic. Let's go. It is important to note that guide words will not always be present to guide you. That's what I said just now. Meaning that you cannot always rely on them to locate the conclusion and the evidence in an argument, locating the assumption. Whereas the conclusion evidence in an argument are always explicit, present there, bang. Okay. The assumption is always implicit, hidden. This fellow is a secretive fellow, dangerous guy. And please be careful. I want you to do extra stuff for how to identify an assumption. Once you do that, you're a champion in critical reasoning. Yes, anybody can identify, premises and conclusions. Anybody can. But the person who identifies assumptions, he's the champion or she's the champion. Right? Let's go. The assumption is always implicit, hidden, unsaid, in between the lines. Your wish. The fact that assumptions are by definition implicit means that they will not be stated, that is written down on paper or spoken out aloud by the speaker. They exist foremost in the mind of the author or speaker. I'll add some more thing to that. They do not require proof, as I said earlier. Conclusions and evidence, on the other hand, are explicit. This means that they'll be stated, physically written down on paper or spoken out aloud. All right. Evaluating arguments, tip 21. All right. Now we will be taking this up later. Actually, to be very frank with you, we can stop here. But if you want to take up a couple of questions, all right. Do you want to? All right. Okay, let's go. What is theory without questions, right? Let's go. Let's go. Parts of an argument. Look to the left, only to the left. Conclusion, evidence, assumptions. Stated or implied. Explicit assumption is always implicit. Evidence is. This means uh, I'll give you 30 seconds. Go through it. All right. Pause your things, please. Yeah. Right. Let's go. Short exercises to practice using. I told you some exercises. Okay. One. Dorothy and her college entrance exam. One. Argument. As Dorothy achieved a high score on her college entrance exam, she will surely succeed in college. All right. What is the conclusion? Well, it is she will surely succeed in college. What's the evidence? Anyone can tell that. As Dorothy achieved a high score on her college entrance exam. And what is the assumption? Now, this is. Okay, go ahead. Achieving high scores in college will invariably lead to. success. All right, achieving high scores. That's the assumption. Is it said there? No. It's implicit. It is invisible. Is it a premise? Is it an evidence, piece of evidence? Of course, yes. So that's example one. Here's one more. Two, Finland argument. Finland is the most technologically advanced country in the world. Oh, that's a big one. He's making big statement. Nokia guy. More people per capita own mobile phones in Finland than anywhere else on earth. All right. Conclusion. Now, even a sixth standard student can say it. Conclusion is the first sentence. Finland is the most technologically advanced country in the world. Evidence? Because more people per capita own mobile phones in Finland than anywhere else on earth, Finland is the most technologically advanced country in the world. You see, I turned it around. All right. How about turning it around once again in another way? All right. Given the fact that more people per capita own mobile phones in Finland than anywhere else on earth, Finland is the most technologically advanced country in the world. All right. That's the conclusion. But what's the evidence? What's the evidence? I'm sorry. What's the assumption? What's the assumption? Actually, it's a stupid assumption here, as far as I'm concerned. Uh, but then, logically, it is valid. You can't say it's not valid. Okay, this argument is very valid. All right. The assumption is, uh, if more people of any country own on more mobile phones per capita, if a country has the more mobile phones a country has per capita, the more technologically advanced it is. Since Finland has the most mobile phones per capita, it's the most technologically advanced country. You see that? That's the assumption. The assumption is, all right. Okay, the last. Let's do one more. This is a big one. Argument. Dear Anita, you know, I get such a great feeling when I talk to my old high school friends and find out they're doing well. Just yesterday, I spoke with Paul and Maxine and have been in a good mood ever since. Say, I hear you're kind of down in the dumps lately. If you go home and call your high school friends, it will cheer you up and you will be ready to take on the whole world with a smile. Talk to you soon, Bill. Now, this is called a complex argument. It's not just one argument, it's more than one argument. It has multiple conclusions. And what are those multiple conclusions? I'll give you some time. Let's see. The first conclusion is I spoke to with Paul and Maxine and have been in a good mood ever since. And the evidence is I get such a great feeling when I talk to my old high school friends and find out they're doing well. You see that? That's one. The second conclusion is you can take on the whole world with a smile. How come? All you have to do is to go to high school and go home and call your high school friends. It'll cheer you up. That's conclusion one. And since it'll cheer you up, you can take on the whole world. And the final conclusion, all right, talk to you soon. No, I'm sorry, that's not the conclusion. Talk to you soon, Bill. All right. That's completely different. So this is called a complex argument. Let's see what happens. All right. Those three are the ones. For today, I'm not taking four. All right. Three are enough. Let me round it up now. Every argument must consist of, let's go back quickly. One, two, three, four. Here we are. Here we are. Here we are. Here we are. This is the most important part of what you can learn. All right. And what's the most difficult part? You got it. Assumption. And the second most important part is, once again, here you are. Left side, are all premise indicators. Premise is also called evidence. Right side is, conclusion indicators, or conclusion is also called a claim. What did I not speak of? Locating the assumption is a golden scale. Overall, critical reasoning is an absolute golden scale. That's it for today. All right. Thanks a lot. See you in the next class with deeper analysis of and discussion of critical reasoning. Thank you very much. This is Ram Mohan signing off.